Well, good day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to another podcast from Take Charge of Your Health Naturally. And for me today, it's a huge pleasure. I have a guest working in an area that we've never really covered before. So I have found working and meeting with Dr. Dolores has been quite inspiring. So I just want to tell you a little bit about Dr. Dolores first before I hand over to her. So besides being a nurse practitioner, she's a medical intuitive. She's an energy whisperer. Now that's we're going to hear more about. So Dolores, she takes us beyond the mind-body paradigm. And she includes spirituality in wellness and assists her clients to unravel the energetic discords in their lives. Now, that brings us to that very thing I mentioned earlier, energy whisperer. Dolores, a huge welcome.
Well, Margie, thank you so much for having me. It's nice to connect with people from across the pond.
So, Dr. Dolores, after you've just shared your story, what brought you into this very particular area of work, and then explain a little bit more to our listeners what this energy whisperer is. I've heard about, dog whisperers and horse whisperers, but not an energy whisperer. So it's all yours, my love.
Oh, thank you. Well, gosh, where do I start? I'd probably start from the beginning. Many of us probably who your audience is catering to are empaths, intuitives, and highly sensitive people. I'm pretty sure of that. I myself was born that way. We all are born that way. However, what happens when we are strategically placed in our families is another story. Sometimes your parents don't know what to do with you and they try to put you in a box and you don't fit into the box, and you do your survival techniques to get through your childhood. So for me, since I grew up in a family where we weren't allowed to feel because my mom was a product of an alcoholic household where she lived through some hell herself. And so her MO was not to feel anything and not to experience it, but to ignore it. And when you say that to an empath, intuitive, or highly sensitive person, guess what happens? It doesn't go away, it gets bigger. So I used to say that to my mother, it's not going away, it's getting bigger. So I was really fortunate that for me to express my emotions, I really caught on to music and really excelled at that. In fact, I was on the pathway to become a concert clarinetist. And in the 11th hour, when I was a teenager, that shifted. And this is the next part of the story I'm going to tell you, is that during my childhood, my father ended up having to have back surgery in the mid-1960s. So you are like predating healthcare as we know it today. They didn't have anywhere near what they had today to take care of people. He picked up a hospital-acquired infection after having a back surgery to remove a ruptured disc, was in the hospital on his deathbed for almost 2 months. So he did survive that, but this is where your parents say everything's okay, and then it's not. And then you see it finally when they come home and you're like, oh my God, who is this person? Because I didn't even recognize a man who used to weigh 186 pounds and was down to 120 because he had wasted away so much. He survived that, he got better. And then 4 years later in 1970, whenever his immune system got compromised, this whole sequela occurred again. He would be in the hospital on his deathbed, have to have an operation and all this other stuff. He would survive, but this happened not once, but 4 times between 1970 and 1975. In 1975, the 4th time that this was happening, the CAT scanner was developed. It was actually the first piece of modern technology used in diagnosis in healthcare. And so they put my father underneath the CAT scanner, and lo and behold, they found where his health problems were coming from was when he had that original back surgery back almost 10 years prior. Their solution for that problem was that he was going to have massive back surgery, which was a spinal fusion, and in 1975 was in its neophyte stages of development. So it came with very high risks of either dying, being paralyzed, or maybe you would get better, or maybe not. My mom was at her wit's end because she had 4 kids, including me, my father to take care of, and a roller coaster marriage because of all these health challenges. She started looking at alternatives, like maybe, faith healing, spiritual healing. She was desperate. In fact, a lot of times people we didn't have the internet or Google search or Google MD back in the 1970s. We had like the Daily News, the National Enquirer, and it just so happened in the National Enquirer, there was an article, a featured article about a man who was a Presbyterian minister from Cairo, Michigan in the United States, who had the gift of laying on of hands, and he was being featured because he was assistive in helping his brother heal from leukemia. So this was in 1975, and at that time in 1975, the Reverend was also doing this work for well over 25 years. So he had been doing it since the 1950s, pretty much. But you also have to remember this was considered quackery back in the day, okay, because it was anything that was not Western medicine. Okay. So my father, being the big skeptic that he should have been from the state, the Missouri, the show me state, because he had to see things to believe it. Okay. He was a skeptic. My father wasn't in agreement with this until he said to my mother, only if my surgeon says it's okay. So it just so happened my parents were in the hospital at the time because my dad was in the hospital. And my mom marched down to the nurse's station where the doctor surgeon was sitting. And she made an announcement to the surgeon, doctor, I'm thinking about having a spiritual healer come in to assist my husband. Would that be okay? Surgeon's writing, doesn't miss a beat, looks up at her and said, sure, that would be fine, and continues doing what he's doing. So of course my mom ran with that back to the room to say your surgeon gave the blessing. And so my dad was on board with that. And not even 10 minutes went by from the initial conversation from that surgeon. My mom went back out to the desk, same surgeon sitting there. She announced to the surgeon that my husband agreed to have the spiritual healer come to assist. And he looked up at her and said, what are you talking about? I never agreed to it. So this is what we call a God moment, where the universe was starting to line things up for something else. Of course, my mother didn't share that piece of information with my father till years after. A month later, Reverend Holmes came to our home in Connecticut. I grew up in New England. My 3 siblings, my 2 grandmothers, my parents, and Reverend Holmes were there in our little living room. And my dad was sitting down. My dad was barefoot. My dad also had a leg length discrepancy, meaning that one of his legs was shorter than the other. And I don't know how the minister knew this, but he said to my father, Joe, put both your feet up. And sure enough, there was a 1-inch gap between the longer and the shorter. He said, put your legs down. My father did so. And then the Reverend put his hand on my dad's solar plexus and the top of his head, his crown chakra, said some prayers. And not even 3 minutes went by and he said, put both your feet up. And this is where my life changed forever. Both his feet were the same length. So my dad needed to see visual evidence that something was occurring. That was my initiation, that I knew it was not my life's mission or passion to go into music, but to go into healthcare, to bridge the gap between what can be seen and what can't be seen, but also what is the physical and what is the spiritual, and combining the two. My father bawled like a baby once that happened because he needed some validation that something was actually happening. The Reverend said more prayers over my father for about a half an hour, and then he was instructed to lie down and rest. And my dad pretty much slept for the next 24 hours, because when we get massive energy work done to our system, our body needs to recalibrate and reprogram itself. It's almost like a computer getting a huge download. You know how you have to reboot it? It's like our physical body needs to reboot the energy so it's more aligned with the higher vibration. He returned back to get a repeat CAT scan a month later. There was no evidence of the infection or his problem where it was stemming from. It had healed. He never had to have that surgery. He never had to revisit that problem. And he passed away about 12 years ago at the age of 80.
That is remarkable.
Yeah.
So tell me, Dr. Dolores, are you, with your medical background, is this the field that you are working in day to day with your clients on the spiritual healing level?
Yes.
So would you just say a short explanation of that spiritual or whisperer?
Okay, well, let's talk about the energy whisperer thing. My clients gave me that name because one of my gifts is that when people start talking, it's like I'm able to unravel the energy of the thoughts, the beliefs, where people are stuck, where people are not stuck, where people are misaligned. Because you have to remember that everything is energy. We as human beings, we are a denser form of energy. That means the molecules are bigger and heavier, but our thoughts, our beliefs, our feelings, our emotions are like wavelengths, okay? Even though we can't physically see them, energetically they're there, and I'm able to tap into that, and I could feel where things are off kilter or where maybe a tweak needs to have happen. So that's why they call me an energy whisperer, because it's just like people will start talking and I could kind of see everything. It kind of unravels. It's like this big knotted yarn of energy, and it kind of goes off into these different little tangents. We know that, and I've been trained in Western medicine. I have a doctorate in nursing practice, which is the end educational track for a nurse practitioner, clinical nurse specialist, nurse anesthetist, and even a nurse midwife. So I have the education behind me. I also have done clinical research, so I know all about research and statistics and manipulating things and stuff like that. I find that where we're going in healthcare is more like this. I think people are starting to realize that we're more than our physical bodies. And the physical body is the tip of the iceberg of what we're able to see is happening. Just say, for an example, somebody's diagnosed with diabetes, okay? That's the tip of the iceberg. You have like your high blood sugar and everything else, but the underlying issues that contributed to that. Okay, were you raised in a family where you weren't allowed to feel or experience your emotions? If that's possible, if that's part of your thing, that contributes to developing this, because a lot of times when you don't experience your emotions, you have trapped pockets of energy in your body. And a lot of times, there's a lot of anger and resentment, and that's right around like the liver, spleen, sequela, right in that area of the body. And when and your pancreas is there too. So that has a lot to do with your, monitoring your blood sugar and stuff like that, and maintaining your blood sugar. So maybe a person wasn't experiencing their feelings, or maybe they had some type of post-traumatic thing, some horrendous childhood event that happened that caused them to kind of check out from their physical body. Or maybe their self-talk, what they're saying to themselves in the silence of your mind. We all talk to ourselves. Are you kind to yourself? Are you beating yourself up? What are you saying to yourself? A lot of times, people don't realize this, but this really changes your body's chemistry. But this is all underlying, okay? This is, you have the problem up here, but Western medicine looks at trying to fix this problem up here without addressing the underlying issues. And when you address the underlying issues, sometimes this reverses. It might be just even changing your diet and just loving yourself more, or dealing with those emotions, or maybe the grief that you never experienced, but it's trapped in your body because it's energy.
So, Dr. Dolores, that brings me to a question. When we spoke earlier,
yeah,
why is it so important to being your own best friend?
Oh my God. All right. Well, that's a good one, because the thing is, it's like the longest relationship you're ever going to have in your life is the one you have with yourself. The one you have with yourself. Okay. Your spouse isn't going to be the longest relationship. Your children aren't going to be, your parents, maybe if you passed away before them, but the likelihood of, so it's about us reprogramming ourselves to be kinder to ourselves, learning to love ourselves for all the things that we label not so good, ugly, bad, or whatever. We are kinder to a stranger than we are to ourselves. What's interesting even further, Margie, is this. Are you familiar with the work of Dr. Masaru Emoto?
I am.
Yes. So, you're going to understand completely what I'm talking about. But for the audience, I'd like to just explain. Dr. Emoto was a scientist from Japan who passed away probably about 10 years ago, but he is known for studying water and the composition of water, in particularly when you label vessels of water with words like love, appreciation, I hate you, war. And what he would do with those labeled waters with the different words, he would fast freeze them and look at them underneath a microscope. And of course, the ones that were like appreciation were these beautiful, symmetrical, unique crystals that looked, they were so beautiful. You could feel the energy coming from that. And of course, the ones that were, I hate you, war, killing, were all fragmented, non-symmetrical, and actually kind of gray and off color. So taking that a step further, the thing, if our physical bodies are at least 75 to 80% water, okay? When we talk to ourselves, we are labeling ourselves. Whether it's a positive or a negative, we are labeling ourselves, and your body is going to adjust to the vibration of what that labeling is. And I know that's a little out there for some people, but it's a truth. It's the truth. So what are you saying to yourself? Are you saying, looking in the mirror and saying, I love you? Or are you like being so critical, looking in the mirror and saying, I hate my body? So what are you creating right there? Something, just being aware of that is enough to shift that. Because remember, healing happens instantaneously. It's like a pivot point. It's about going from unawareness to awareness. Once you're aware, you can change anything. It's when you're on the unconscious and unawareness mode that you have no clue. You might on some level, but it's an unconscious, kind of thing that's happening. But so that's important too. And, just to take that a step further, we talk about energy and vibration. They did an interesting study at a high school not too long ago. I read about this, where they had identical plants. Each plant was put at different ends of the hallway, nowhere is near each other, but there was instructions on the wall for the one plant to just say loving thoughts and appreciation and stuff like that to the plant. And then on the other end of the campus was another plant that had, say all these negative things to it. Same exact plant, okay, same size and stuff. What do you think happened? Yeah. The one that was loved and appreciated flourished. The one that was all these negative things that were said to it, like I hate you and stuff, what do you think it did? It just wilted and perished. I mean, that's just an example of the effectiveness of our words and the power of our words, but also the vibration and what it can do energetically.
I mean, that is so valuable to bring to everyone's attention, to look at why we need to treat ourselves in the very best possible way, which brings me to one of my final questions. Why is it, because we talked about this before, why is it so important for people to perhaps put on glasses and do the inner work?
Oh my gosh, Margie, everything starts with us first. Okay. We talk about self-love, self-respect, self-appreciation. People have been led to believe that our power is outside of ourselves. In fact, many of us unconsciously have given that personal power over to something else to make the decisions for themselves. We have gotten to the point where we no longer trust ourselves because we're not connected to ourselves. We have disconnected from ourselves because of, us giving our power away to something else. We're in a revolutionary time where it's time to come back to self, take your power back. And how do you do that? You go within yourself. You start believing, you start breathing, you start being integrated into your physical body. Because when you're in your physical body, you're able to feel, you're able to experience your emotions, and believe it or not, that's when you are in the present moment. When you are in your head, believe it or not, you're never in the present moment. You're either thinking about yesterday or contemplating tomorrow and trying to figure something out. The cosmic joke is there's nothing to figure out. We have all the information we need when we come within ourselves, okay? You will have a better utilization of your time by doing what is in alignment with who you are, not what everybody else should be doing, but who you are and what you should be doing for your next steps as you move along your journey on this life. And the only way you're going to get to that is to learning how to have a relationship with yourself, because you'll learn how to trust yourself, you'll learn how to love yourself, you'll learn how to appreciate yourself and respect yourself and value yourself. So important. It all starts with us first. So I tell people, it's just like, don't drink the Kool-Aid that it happens out there, because it doesn't. It all happens here.
So with anybody who's resonating with what you're saying, where do they start? Because I know you've got a special little gift that you'd like to offer all the listeners. Where should they start?
Well, first of all, I want to share about this free gift that I have. It's a guided meditation to be in the present moment. It's a very short 5-minute meditation. When you go to my website, drdoloresfazzino.com, DOLORES, F as in Frank, AZZ as in zebra, INO.com. You'll be a pop-up and you could sign up for that. And I invite you to do that, because if you're the type of person that's a worrywart, or you feel lost, or feel like what had been working before no longer is working for you, this is perfect for you. Because what happens is that when we are not in the present moment, we get out of sync. When we come within and come into the present moment, that's where all the magic happens, because you're able to hear the subtleties of that inner voice that tells you, that's your intuition, check this out. You might want to go check this out. That's talking to you, and you go check it out, and it's actually the right thing for you to be doing. It's like a little hunch you get. When we're in our head, we can't hear that little subtle hunch. You have to be in your body. So this is a great way to start to learn how to become present in your body and experience the present moment.
I call that the still, quiet voice. That's
exactly.
what I call it. Once anybody does what Dr. Dolores has said, then you'll understand that little still, quiet voice, the volume increases, and you learn to receive it more easily, more quickly. And even when you're not even there, it comes in, and that's not just a thought, it's that quiet voice of guidance from within. So once you've experienced it, it's fantastic.
Very true, Margie. And you know what? It's like once you turn that on and you're attuned to it, it's very difficult to turn it off.
Oh, yeah, true.
It's just like it's there, and it's just like, and every day you just get more and more, you're stepping into your own personal power, which is your sovereign right as a human being here on earth. It's all about us all taking our power back right now, which is our sovereign divine right.
Dr. Dolores, I so appreciate you sharing what you did and talking from the heart and with your amazing years of experience, both in healthcare and in this amazing whispering work that you do. Is there one last tip you'd like to leave with the listeners before we say goodbye?
Absolutely, Margie. I just want everybody to just remind themselves that life is a journey. It's not a destination. You are here on earth getting a PhD in learning whatever you're learning right now. Okay. And yes, it's not a one and done. You need to work at it, but the rewards will be incredibly immense when you do.
How wonderful. All the way from California. Thank you so much, Dr. Dolores. I look forward to connecting with you again soon. And I'm sure our listeners have gained a lot of very valuable information to move forward on their journey or to connect with you to guide them on that journey.
Absolutely.
So from
Thank
us,
you.
from Take Charge of Your Health Naturally, because on this journey, there's no drugs, no therapeutic drugs. We don't want to go there. And I think with this beautiful story, we're able to go there more and rely less on having to take sleeping pills and headache pills and de-stress pills and all of those sort of things. We don't want to go there because the side effects we know of therapeutic drugs, it's not worth it. So from me, I love you all and see you again soon. Thanks, Dr. Dolores.
Thanks, Margie.